Welcome to the Monday Monologue, Christmas edition, and also post-COVID. Still get a little bit of a froggy voice, but throat's a little sore still and little sniffles, but fever's gone and feeling better, so yay. Hopefully gonna have that behind us, and got some stuff to go over today. I decided to use this hammer finish paint on my EL34 12AX7 amp, and I think it looks really good with the bronze colored rings and this dark bronze color on the transformer bells. I think it looks really cool. Got the hardware painted black. I've got some black oxide hardware ordered because this painted stuff obviously doesn't hold up. It chips off and it's just silver underneath it. So we're going to replace all the hardware with some nice black oxide coated stuff. And then we got these little black screens for the heat to come out from underneath. Decided to go with like those cement 10 watt 500 ohm resistors for the cathode resistors. And going to mount them where they can vent through the vent here, which I think will solve the problem with the heat building up under the amp without having to resort to putting the resistors on the top. Anyway, going to start wiring this thing up next week and start figuring out how I'm going to lay out the power supply and everything. Obviously, I figured out from the last video, I don't know if you saw about the capacitors, we're going to be using a Solene cap for the first cap in the power supply. And that's kind of the subject of this Monday Monologue, is the mysteries of audio. And I know there's some of you out there that, had 12 years of electrical engineering that are going to go, oh, it's simple why this is happening. But I've never seen anybody explain it in a way that actually makes any sense to me. And that's like how these capacitors sound so different. And I bought this breakout board for my Analog Discovery 2, which is an impedance analyzer. And can be used with capacitors and speakers and all kinds of stuff. And I was really hoping to see a big difference testing capacitors, especially like this film cap and this Solene film cap, the WEMA Solene, a little box cap versus this round one. These things sound completely different in the power supply. But when you measure them with this impedance analyzer, I can't see enough difference that would account for what I'm hearing. And I checked like the phase, I checked the inductance, I checked, all the stuff that I could see to measure with this new tool, and I'm just not seeing any difference. And then I went through all these caps, this little cheap Mundorf 0.33 UF. Here's a giant MyFlex cap. Here's a big Mundorf cap, one of these Supreme M caps. And here's the smaller aluminum oil ones that I like. And those are all the same value, and they measure the same. I don't see the difference, at least in the impedance. And I know some folks made some comments on the last video about the capacitors, saying things like, oh, well, of course it made a difference. Like I'm a dummy. The dynamic impedance is critical and all. The dynamic impedance graphs look identical. So that's not what's going on. And then people talk about like these need 50 or 100 hours to break in before they sound good. What's changing them out of them? I mean, I know they change, but some caps seem to be super sensitive to like the break-in period, or there's a huge change in what they sound like. Like these MyFlex caps, they sound terrible when you first put them in an amp. And it takes a long time for these to break in and start sounding good. And I still don't think they sound as good as these Mundorf aluminum oils do. And these things, yeah, when you first plug it in, they're a little shrill. But like 2 album sides and they're done. They're ready to go. And the same thing with these Soling caps. Within 30, 45 minutes, they're broken and rocking and rolling, where people are saying these things need 50 or 100 hours. And that gets back to this production amp. I can't, in good faith, sell people a hi-fi product with a disclaimer on it that's like, yeah, it's not going to sound good till you have it running 100 hours or 500 hours of music playing through it. To me, that is just not realistic. Majority of people are going to want it to sound good when they plug it in and turn it on. Especially if they pay, $2,500 for a piece of hi-fi gear. It can't sound like garbage when they plug it in. And so the parts that I picked to put in this amp, they can't take forever to break in because I need to be able to burn these things in and they need to sound good before I put them in a box. Which is, again, I can't use stuff like this that needs, 50 hours of runtime before they start sounding good. That's why they're going to get these. That's why it's going to get these. And again, people say that these sound good after they break in for a super long period of time, but I just don't have time to do that. And so, again, I guess part of the mystery of this whole thing is, why do some of these things take just a little bit of time to start sounding good and other things take forever? And like those Western Electric tubes, the fact that the factory says on the advertising that they need 500 hours of break-in. Guys, that's a ridiculous amount of time to expect someone to, demo or test some piece of audio gear before they can actually say, okay, it's time to listen to it. And then somebody commented that, yeah, if you don't use a tube for 2 or 3 days, it's back to square one, and you gotta use it, you gotta burn it for another 400 hours. It's like, man, the lifespan of the tube isn't that super long, to the point where every time you let it sit for 2 days, it needs 500 hours of break-in again before it starts sounding good. I don't want something like that. And like these JJ tubes, again, I feel like after about 2 hours of runtime at the most, they're ready to go. And they really don't change after that. And this little Gold Lion 12X7, same thing. It sounded good right out of the box. And, a week later it still sounds good. So, I just feel like sometimes these super long hours people attribute to things needing before they sound good is just to get you past the return period, or to kind of discount people like me that are reviewing this stuff without listening to it for 3 months every day for it to get enough hours on it to where they can just go, oh, well, yeah, you didn't let it burn in for 500 hours. And I know Wilson said the same thing about their KT88 tubes that come in their R8 amp, that they need hundreds of hours before they break in and start sounding good. Well, other tubes don't need that. So if yours actually need that much time, and explain to me what about it changes in that 500 hours that all of a sudden it starts working right. And it can't work right until it's been run that long. That doesn't make any sense to me. And so I do get that things do need a little bit of time to settle in, but the stuff that I'm using, a couple of album sides, and it's ready to go. Or you've gotten, 80-90% of what it's ever going to be at that point. I know my little phono stages are the same way. When you first plug them in, that first album side doesn't sound super great, but by the time you flip the album over, it's really starting to sound good. And by the time you put another album on, yeah, it's broken and it's done what it's going to do. And so, yeah, I guess I was disappointed. I was hoping this impedance analyzer was going to really, show something dramatic. Because, like, when you hook speakers up to it, the impedance curves of speakers is hugely different and visible. And this little add-on board is great for that. If you don't have any way of, checking your speaker impedances, or you've got some older speakers, or you're building speakers, and you don't know what the impedance curves look like, this little breakout board, it's only like $25 to add on to your Analog Discovery 2. Then you can, profile your speakers. And I wonder if maybe what's going on with these capacitors is this little board's only running at about 5 volts peak to peak through these capacitors, and they need to have 400 volts run through them to be able to see the difference between the two of them, and for the impedance differences to really show up. And at these super low voltages that are way below where these are being operated, there isn't any visible difference. And it only shows up when you really put voltage to them or have them in the condition that they're going to be running. And same with these coupling caps, because 5 volts peak to peak is nothing. Some of these things have, in my 300B amp, it's got 140 volts peak to peak going through the coupling cap, which is, way beyond what this thing could do. And so I may need to figure out how to set up a different kind of a test thing so I can test these at higher voltages, because I really would like to see what's going on about why this cap sounds different than this cap, sounds different from this cap, sounds different from this cap. And this, they all measure the same. So the only thing I can figure is we don't have enough voltage going through them is the way I'm testing them to show the difference. So that's going to be something in the future I dive into. Did get a couple of musical power supply, 15 watt, 5K, ultralinear output transformers to try in my prototype amp. And I think what I'm going to do is build 2 identical amps other than the output transformers, so that then I can A/B, swap them out and listen to the difference between the two of them. Because I feel like, just doing one channel back and forth, while it was sort of useful, it's kind of weird trying to listen to like the sound stage in mono. You can't, because there's nothing there. You need both channels. And so I think to really be able to discern the difference between these versus the 15 watt Ed cores, it's going to be to build 2 prototypes that are identical. So you got to build several of them anyway, and then make my mind up about which one of these output transformers I'm going to use. And if there is an audible difference, they may sound the same or very close. It may be hard to tell the difference, and really need someone, a third party kind of person, to be able to listen to them too. So I could take them over to my friend's house, swap them out A/B, and then, kind of blind listen to them, because they won't know which ones are which transformers. I will, but they won't. And yeah, try to figure out which way I'm going to go with these. But I do need to get the circuit built, listen to this, and make sure that the circuit that I come up with is right, and tweak all of that and get all that kind of stuff going. Some of the comments did mention that I should make a model with like a cover or a cage on it for people with kids or pets or whatever. And Hammond does make a perforated cover. I think the sides are solid and it's perforated on the front, the top, and the back. That it's about this high, I think. It's about 10 inches high. And it would cover the transformers and everything. It would just be like a little box over the top of it. And I think those things sell for about $75. And I would need to make sure that, it clears all the transformers and stuff, buy one and just kind of test fit it and then have that as an option. I kind of doubt that many people are going to care about putting a cover over the top of it, but hey, I guess I need to have that option available. I got to play too with the whole triode ultralinear thing and make sure that works and both modes sound good, because if they don't, I'm not going to sell it with a switch that is like good and bad. They both need to sound good, and I don't want to build this as a triode amp. I just don't think it's going to have enough power for most people, and so I got to think that through, as well as the possible feedback switch, and where I would put all that stuff that wouldn't have a negative impact on the way the amp performs, or introduce a noise into it or something. So anyway, that's kind of it for an update on what's going on. Like I said, I just got over COVID and was down for about a week, so haven't got a lot done on some of these things. I do want to show a couple of products that I really like. One of them you may never have heard of. I, years ago, was into model trains, and this Walthers company makes this stuff called Goo, and it's a contact cement that's rubberized, and it's a really interesting product. It's a lot thicker than like Pliobond, and so it's really useful in places where you need something that's not super runny like the Pliobond is, which is another good product. But this Goo, about the only place you can find it is like a hobby store that sells model train stuff. But this is some really cool glue, and I use it for all kinds of stuff. And I try to keep 2 or 3 tubes of it around, or buy 2 or 3 tubes at a time when I run out. And it's just a really good product. So I don't know if I don't think it's, I have to look. I don't think Amazon sells it. I think I had to get it at a hobby store. So this is really good stuff. Pliobond is also really good. It's a little thinner than this. It's kind of good to have both types, but so that's a little, product that I really have had good luck with. The other thing I want to share is some festive holiday music. I know most of y'all have seen Charlie Brown Christmas. This vinyl is so good. And years ago I bought the CD because I love the music on this, and the CD just sounds terrible. I mean, it's really, really bad. And this is one of those cases where the difference between a CD and vinyl, or like the digital stuff that you can get on, the different music streaming things, and the vinyl is just giant. The vinyl sounds so good. And this was done by Fantasy Records, Concord Music Group, California. Got this off Amazon. This is a green vinyl pressing, and I'm pretty sure they're still selling it at Amazon. I'll put the link below if they are. It sounds really good, and these guys really killed it for Christmas music. It's so fun, and if you don't have a copy of this and you listen to vinyl, definitely buy this. It's awesome. Don't bother buying the CD. It's terrible. So there's my music selection for this week, and I did get my LLC created. I got my EIN number, getting my bank account set up later this week, and so got the green light on getting my business going as of January 1st. When I get my local little business license thing applied for my home business. So that should be all good to go by January 1st. So yeah, I'm gotta get through these prototype things. I've got 4 color preamps that I'm going to be building, and 3 of them are going to be for sale. Gonna keep building these little EAR 834 clones. Had somebody send me a prototype of a smaller footprint board that they made, and we'll be doing a little showcase on his boards. He's working on an even smaller version, And I'm a little concerned about things getting too compact of noise or whatever, but who knows? It might be super quiet and be able to be half the size of the ones that I'm building now, which would be nice. So we're going to try to keep improving these EAR 834 clone. Uses the same circuit, but it's just such a great sounding preamp. I will say the last one I built for a customer, he wanted to use Jupiter caps, which are these big, expensive things that look like this. They're copper foil. And I've built them before with MyFlex caps and took them out because I just didn't like the way they sounded. And I know MyFlex caps sound good in certain situations, and some people like them for coupling caps, but in the phono stage, I just don't think they sounded good. But he sent me the caps. I built it with his caps. I let it burn in for probably 3 days here, just playing for 10 hours a day, music playing through it. And it sort of started sounding a little better. So I told the guys that I can't keep just burning this in. So I sent it to him. And after a couple of weeks, he emailed me back and he said, "You're right. The other one I got with the Mundorf little aluminum wool cap sounds better." So I guess some of this is just trial and error, and people are just going to have to learn to, listen to folks that have tried this stuff or play with it themselves. Because up until right now, I haven't found a good way to actually test these things to say, oh yeah, if you see a curve like this, it's going to sound good. There's something else going on, and I'll admit I don't know what it is, other than I know that there's something there. So, like with this power supply cap, there were some other commenters that said, well, of course, everything in the power supply matters. Well, no, it doesn't. I mean, I've swapped different brands of electrolytic caps from the cheap little Amazon ones to Nikon to Audio Note, and honestly, I couldn't hear any difference. Cathode bypass caps, they're supposed to be like a huge bane of audio gear. I've changed from cheap ones to super high-end ones, and the difference is there's a little something there, but guys, it's a little something. This was huge. This was like, oh my God, I broke my amplifier. So, yeah, there's definitely some mysteries in this stuff still to me. And I'm not sure I'll ever understand all of it, but I'm starting to learn what matters and what doesn't. And some of the things that I thought mattered a lot really don't seem to make any difference. And then things that, like this, that I didn't think was going to be much, if anything, was huge. So I guess that's the fun of this, is there's always something to learn about this. So anyway, hope you guys are having a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever it is you celebrate. Thanks for being supportive of my channel. Thanks for all the encouragement to get my business started. I really appreciate that. Hope things go great next year. I have a feeling they will. I'm excited about where all this is going. Thanks to all you Patreon folks, and also folks that make donations. Appreciate that. That really helps me, afford to do this and stimulates me to keep going on this channel and this project and all the stuff we're doing here. And until next year, y'all have a wonderful holiday and Merry Christmas.